Thanks for joining us today on CCnDoc Talk, where we talk about everything under the sun. You never know quite what you're going to get, but you'll always be entertained. Hello and welcome to our podcast. This is a very special podcast. This is podcast 11, and I'll share with you that we were actually going to publish a different podcast today, and all of a sudden it hit me that it was the 11th podcast, and we're not going to get...
It's a magic number.
It is a magic number for us, and we're not going to get too many chances for an 11 podcast. So therefore, we have decided to share a little bit about our experience with 11s in our life, specifically 1111, which some people would know as an angel number, or and so we just thought we'd share a little bit about that. And I definitely think it's probably going to lead into a conversation about sort of the range and breadth of our spiritual beliefs, which are eclectic as we are, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, it is. Oh, my goodness. Well, I mean, the 11 came from, in my world, because my sister Tammy, who was killed by a drunk driver at age 17, I was 15, her birthday was August 11th. And so all of a sudden I started seeing 11s on the clocks. And then I started seeing 11s all the time. And then I would see 11s everywhere. You and I were in Cancun driving around one time, and there was this thing that said 11. And I sent it, a thing. I mean, describe the thing.
A mural.
It was a big mural. Yeah. And on a wall, and it was huge, and I just remember I sent it to my sister, and she goes, "Oh, that just means side by side, the two of you can do anything." And then there was a sign over a door, like a club, 1111. I mean, and I just see 1111s everywhere, and then I also see feathers. But anyway, so 811 I see all the time, and 1111 is a magic number.
We'll get back to the feathers, and you and I see the 11s. We see the 1111 on the clock a lot, but we also see 111, we see 811, 911, 1011. I mean, it really runs the gambit.
Yeah.
And the other fascinating thing is, and some of you probably know that idea of the pennies from heaven sort of perspective. So where you,
right.
If you find a penny, it's someone from heaven trying to connect with you, and you
pennies
find
from heaven.
It is pennies from heaven, except that for you, it's always a dime and a penny. So it's 11 cents.
I find 11 cents all the time together. And the strangest one was you bought us tickets to go see Teresa Caputo, who was the Long Island medium.
Yep.
And we went, and we had floor seating,
Yep.
About 20 rows back from the stage, and she was amazing. And she did come up to me to ask if I had, a piece of my sister's jewelry on, and that message wasn't for me. But I do recall that as I walked up to my chair, there was 11 cents, a dime and a penny, under my chair. And I said, there's so many people here that need Teresa's readings, so much more than me. But I already knew that my sister was there. Her name was Tammy. And I'm like, Tammy's already here. She's already said hi, And so, yeah, I mean, there was 11 cents. And out the front door, we have a whole series of dimes and pennies of all the ones that I found along the way. Yeah, I often find 11 cents all the time.
And we often will throw them in the gravel in the driveway so that, it brings us
good luck.
It brings us good luck. So I'm going to go back for a moment, because one of the things that's fascinating to me is you embraced the 1111, and then of course it became a part of my life as well. And then of course with my father's passing, it became very prevalent as well. And we feel very confident that Tammy helped my father across the threshold, across the veil. And of course we believe that his actual time of death was 1111. And then there's this whole other aspect with us about feathers, and we'll talk also a little bit about totem animals and a number of different things. But I want to point out that we were into the 11s and the feathers before this was all cool, and crystals, all the crystals and stones and things.
Yeah.
We have been nerds. We have been woo-woo nerds for years and years and years and years.
But we've been collecting even rocks.
Right.
I mean, it's a heavy, but it's an inexpensive souvenir. We have rocks from all over the world. I just moved them up on the hillside so that we can make a labyrinth out of them.
And we've only lived here for a year, and I'm certain that we have at least 100 pounds of rocks that we've picked up on our
What do you mean?
hikes.
Tons. We have tons of rocks that we've picked up. Oh my gosh.
On our hikes on the property. And so I feel like it's really important to point out, we were into all this stuff before it was cool. I mean, I was into the rocks and crystals thing for as long as I can remember. And then, the feathers started with you, but then again, with my dad, feathers started appearing, and so the feathers became a huge connection for us as well. So, two Midwestern girls who grew up, in the Lutheran church, we've really expanded our spiritual horizons in the last many years. And I think it's safe to say that we both still believe in a higher power. Some people call it different things. You may call it God. I call it Gus, God and universal spirit. I sort of have an umbrella term for it, but
expanded perspective there.
I do think,
and it kind of encompasses the spirits and the angels and the wider.
It does, and then we also believe in the angels, and we do believe that we have spirit guides, and so we just have this very eclectic approach to spirituality and religion, which I love because it also means that we don't have a lot of bias and prejudices about other religions. I don't know. I think you and I are really good about not ever thinking that one person's, religion is better than somebody else's, because we sort of embrace all these many beliefs. That there's even tenets from Buddhism that I find very, very soothing and calming. And, we've done Tonglen. And anyway, so it's just, we thought this would be a fun conversation because it's too bad that on podcasts you can't get that back and forth feedback, because I would love to hear from people, how their spiritual beliefs have developed over the years and how they've incorporated more different
hopefully
things.
Expanded as opposed to become more restricted, because this is a sensitive topic, and people are, they're, especially those that have the firm belief that this is the only way, and
right.
And we're just saying that there's more than one way to look at things, right?
Well, and for us, I think, we're not telling anybody how to think or believe. We're just sharing our personal experiences.
Yeah, we're
and
not
beliefs.
getting into the whole heaven and hell,
right.
and and I would be foolish to think that I could speak to any of the multitude of religions. I do know, the Nicene Creed, the Ten Commandments. I have those that great. Praise from
Lutheran.
I could still. I don't even need to go to a service, and I could actually sing the hymns and I was going to say regurgitate the whole...
all the lithery. Because, that's the thing, right? The whole idea of like Lutheran and Catholic, and we always used to call Lutheran watered down Catholic. But, there's so much doctrine and routine. And I think that some people gravitate toward that because they need that.
Oh, sorry.
She's now singing her hymns.
Praise him above ye heavenly host.
Well, finish it up.
Yeah.
Finish
Praise
it up.
Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Can't clap in Lutheran church. Anyway.
Oh, that's right. You should, though.
Well, I think churches are evolving a little bit, but I think that, some people really do need that routine and the doctrine and the dogma, and I think you and I have sort of rejected that. And part of that might have been, coming to this relationship, because there are so many passages in the Bible that people use they call them the clobber passages, to clobber you over the head with. And I think you and I just moved away from that whole idea of organized religion and doctrine. And so I think for me anyway, I really consider myself much more of a spiritual being. And I think I've said before, I've really realized that I'm a soul in a human body, right? And so versus just being, a body.
Right. Body with a soul.
Right.
I think my turning point with being open to more perspectives was, again, when they used one of the clobber passages, and you understand how they use clobber passages to make a point, right? When they say...
Whether it's against LGBTQ people or whether it's against,
you can find whatever you want and twist it and,
right.
and to solidify your belief system out in the Bible, And so, the clobber passage for me that was kind of like, really? Once I realized how much things are taken out of context, and it's like, man shall not man shall not love another man, and a woman shall not love another woman. But the piece that they leave out is the next phrase, which is more than God. And I'm like, oh, well, that's convenient and easy to leave that off of there. So, okay, duh, I do love God more than, another man or another woman or whatever it is. And I'm just like, oh gosh, so they really can. It's like lying with statistics, You can have 70% or 30%. I can just twist it to match whatever I want to say. Either 70% did or 30% didn't. And I can then, tell you what, I can massage the language around what I want to say. So anyway, I think I've gone off track, which I often do. So back to you.
Well, I just think, I just really love that we have this sort of broad range of beliefs and this broad spirituality that really allows us to be, both empathetic and compassionate toward others. And it also allows us to really kind of respect other people, even though their religious beliefs may differ from ours. And again, I think of myself as much more of a spiritual being. So I want to go back. So we've talked a little bit about the 1111 and where that originated, and that has just been such a huge part of our lives. But do you want to talk a little bit about the feathers and where they started?
Yeah, it's interesting. You said that we've been into the crystals and the spiritual side of things for so long. And I have this huge amethyst geode that I bought 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
That, it was really paramount that I have in my life. And now it's sitting here by the TV facing the couch and putting off that good energy.
Amethyst is actually a fantastic healing stone for so many different things.
So I guess independently, you and I were attracted to these crystals, before we came together as a couple.
Years.
And
years.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I mean, I can remember collecting malachite, items of jewelry just long ago. And it wasn't just because green was my favorite color, but it also spoke to me in some way. And so many do, like labradorite.
And I love tiger's eye. Growing up, I always loved the tiger's eye. It was just kind of that marbly beautiful. And I didn't know what all tiger's eye meant. It's a a stone for protection.
It definitely is. And the really cool thing though about some of this stuff becoming mainstream is, if you speak with spiritual leaders, and we have spiritual advisors that we work with, they will tell you that what the higher realm really wants to see is for us to come together as a humanity and really to have more of a raised consciousness. And so the really cool, fabulous thing about everybody getting into feathers and everybody getting into crystals and people,
I know now you can find all this artwork and everything with feathers, but back in the day,
I know we had to dig for that stuff or make our own.
Yeah. So feathers, feathers.
Wait, let me finish that last point, which was I'm just glad that more people are coming to this, because I do think it's bringing more awareness and raising the vibration maybe a little bit for everybody. Okay, back to you, feathers.
Yeah, feathers. So I have seen feathers all the time, and I see like just a lone feather, like right in front of me in strange places.
Very strange places. Oh my
and
gosh.
so again, traveling for a living, there was always there would be a feather on the jetway. I'd go to check into a hotel room and there's a feather on the floor. I would go to, I remember going to an Avalanche game, which is a hockey team up in Denver, and my seat would have a feather on it. And so, it was very distinct. Just laying right there. I was like, oh, there's my feather for the day.
Yep.
And, I remember one time I was sitting in my work office and I was on the 9th floor, and there was this feather just spinning right outside my window.
I remember that.
Absolutely spinning. And it was kind of floating around, but then it was just upright. And then the feather just went shoom, straight down. So whatever draft it was on. And I ran down and outside the building, and it was just sitting right there in the
middle of downtown Denver.
Yeah, right. Literally off of 16th Street Mall.
Which is so busy and crowded. It's amazing it was still there when you got down there.
Yeah, and so whenever I see the feathers, I'm always like, hi, Tammy. Hey, thanks. Yeah. And I know I keep her busy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of work.
That's a whole other podcast, like how we keep our guardian angels busy. But that's to us, angels, feathers appear when angels are near.
Yes.
And so we have always seen the feathers as a representation of one of our angels, or one of our family members who's passed over, who is trying to send us a message, or at least just trying to connect and communicate and say, hello, we're here. We love you. Or sometimes it's pay attention to something.
Pay attention to something. But I know people can see feathers when you're out there. And when keep an eye out for them. And but they're just everywhere. Beautiful, beautiful feathers, and blue ones and orange ones.
Like when we first moved here to CCnDocs on the Rocks, the pinion jays, which have these amazingly blue, kind of just stunning,
brilliant
blue feathers.
Blue. Yeah,
they were all of it. We kept finding these feathers sticking straight up. Yep. In the driveway, it was almost as if
the quill just went right down, so they'd be standing up.
It's like they were launching
little
them
darts out of the sky.
We have an entire bowl full of these feathers because we feel like it was them saying, like, welcome here. And oftentimes that blue and gray of the pinion jay always reminds me of my dad's favorite Dallas Cowboys. So I always think of him when those feathers come along too. And, it was just kind of validation that we made the right choice. And then if you remember, when we went back and looked at the pictures that we took of this place, the first time we came here, when we went back and looked at them later, there was a feather cloud right above the house that we'd never noticed.
Oh, absolutely. And you see the feathers in the clouds all the time, and they're beautiful.
Yeah. And then we have the whole cloud thing, but yeah, I mean, we're just I don't know.
We're just crazy.
Some people might call us eccentric,
eclectic. I don't know what you want to call it. Weird.
Woo-woo. We're officially lesbians, babe. After 20 years, officially woo-woo lesbians.
But we are deeply rooted in other things as well. So,
we are.
Absolutely. But we embrace the spiritual side of things. And,
we
like the mental journeys on,
Well, and you'll notice, we've obviously talked about a past life regression, and we've talked a lot about meditation lately, and we just recently did the shamanic experience and we're really working on that side of ourselves for a couple of reasons. One is because I think we've mentioned before, we have terrible work habits, and now that we're trying to be retired, we really want to be centered and grounded, and we want to be able to be peaceful in our everyday and our actions and keep the chaos at a minimum. And of course, I'm also trying to help cure myself of cancer, which we believe will happen. And so we are pulling out all the stops. And, I guess I just think, it can't hurt, right?
Yeah,
it can't hurt.
Well, I know, and do you want to say anything more about how you and where you see feathers or where they came into your life? But I just want to, the piece that I want to wrap up around this is how much, as we're going on this healing journey as well, we're embracing Tai Chi, Qigong, a lot of Eastern medicine as well as Western medicine.
Yep.
And so with that comes learning a lot more about Buddhism,
things like Reiki
and so it's really opened us up even more than we already were. But I want to come back. Were there anything regarding feathers of when you started seeing them come into your world?
I think it started with you, but then I really think that it started to ramp up for me as well. And I don't know, I can't really pinpoint when. I do know too, though, that you and I have a great connection to some of the flying creatures of the world. So you have a great connection with hawks and eagles. And I have a connection with the owl, with the osprey, and sort of now the ravens have really become present in our world here. So
let's talk about that, because there's a lot of misperceptions out there regarding the owl. I'm just going to go right for that.
Oh, sure.
One,
well, and the raven as well.
And the raven, because those are messengers from the spiritual world, and
because they can cross both. They can cross both planes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then there's also the perception out there that owls are messengers of death or loss. And so
just bad news in general, bad omens. Same with ravens.
Well, because and owls are creatures of the night, and we also are not we're not comfortable with night. And
as am I, a creature of the night.
Even though you don't like to be outside at night.
That's true. I'm a creature of the night, and I'm afraid of the dark. How do you like that?
So there's a lot of fears. Yeah.
And I watched way too many horror movies when I was a kid, and read way too many Stephen King novels.
So the owl is not always symbolic of death.
No.
They're not messengers of somebody, it's your time.
We do believe they're messengers, but not necessarily bad omen messengers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of homework around that part of things. And so I think a lot of times when we do see a totem animal, we look up what are the meanings of that.
Right. Well, and I think too, because we have a couple of friends who are shaman, and we also have friends who are indigenous Native American people, and they have shared their perspectives with us from that came from their upbringing and their beliefs and their tribal beliefs. And so sometimes we have to look at not just theirs, but then the greater breadth of how did other tribes and cultures look at these things as well. You and I have also I mentioned the Tonglen piece. We've been into acupuncture for a lot of years. We don't do it here because we haven't found a practitioner here, but we've done acupuncture before. That Eastern influence has really been strong for us, as well as what most people would refer to as woo-woo. But we also we also are starting to realize that the woo-woo can also be very tangible.
Well, even the doctor told you, I can only do so much. After that, it's up to you. And so you have to be in charge of your healing,
right? Doing
whatever you can.
Right.
And so that includes that mental,
right?
That whole spiritual, mental piece of it.
Absolutely. So. And he also, mentioned, whether, you have faith or a higher power or someone you can turn things over to, that sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah.
And so I really just see that we're covering all the bases, but, I feel very good about that. I mean, it really, fills me. You've said, after I have a session with Shakara, the Reiki master, and also my trance healer in the Netherlands, who is a medium, and her name is Anneke, by the way. I did get permission to share her name. You've always talked about how
you come out of those sessions and you're just beaming, you're excited, you're like, wow, that was amazing. And I hate to say this, but you come out of your therapy session sometimes and you're like, So I'm like, wow, it's just a distinct difference in the energy and how you're reacting to this. Your vibration is so different.
Yeah, that's true. And I cry equally in all of them. So
but they serve different purposes. But they're so anyhow.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so there's just so many different aspects of this. So if you were to tell anybody, how this stuff makes us feel, how would you describe how, the 1111 makes you feel when you see it or when you find the feather? Like what happens to you when you...
That's a great question. I haven't thought about that. When I think of the crystals, I get more grounded into the earth, into Mother Earth. When I think of the 1111 and the feathers and finding 11 cents, I just think of the angels and the spiritual world, and a lot of gratitude and a lot of thanks there. And so, how about you?
I kind of always feel uplifted, and then there's sort of this idea of wonderment, like that just sort of childlike sort of, I don't know, awe that things like this exist and they happen, and just really being inspired by both the nature and the message, I guess. Like when we walk on the property and we find,
quartz,
we find quartz and jasper and things like that.
I just found a couple
of like
big pieces of jasper today, by the way.
And so that's so cool. And we're just like little kids. We're like, oh, look at this. Look at what I found.
Every day we go out on a walk and we come back with rocks in our pocket.
Piles of rocks everywhere. They also end up in the laundry sometimes.
Try not to.
So I don't know. It just seemed appropriate on the 11th episode to do an 11/11 episode and really share just a little bit about our inner world, right? I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to do one really quick tangent because this is a funny story. One of my old coworkers from the banking world, Marshall, I think he opened my eyes that things can be broader and different. And so he was raised Orthodox Jew, and he decided he wanted to get his master's in religious studies. And in order to do that, he had to take a New Testament class to be able to graduate. So all of a sudden, he's now studying Jesus Christ. And he told the story of him going home and telling the story to his mom of Jesus, or a Jewish boy meets Jesus Christ, and how it was like, she shared with him, or he shared with her, like all the excitement around what he had learned. And she's like, don't share this with your father. But then he went on this quest. I mean, he went around the world, and he went to live in a monastery, and he became a monk for a while. I mean, he really wanted to understand the various cultures. He immersed himself to become a scholar in religious studies. And he said he was disillusioned when he was at the monastery, and they would take him back and just like, well, here's our stash of Coca-Cola and cigarettes or whatever else. And so but by the time he was done with his journey, he was more confused than anything. And so,
I can relate to that, by the way.
Yeah, and so the more open, the more confused, and the more there was so much crossover and other things, and again, using things in ways that benefited you in the way you wanted it to benefit you, and discounting other things because it didn't fit with your belief system. Anyway, so he was fascinating to listen to him talk about his stories and his journeys along the way.
I always loved Marshall because he had the greatest approach to disagreements. And instead of just, flat out disagreeing with people, he'd go, that's one way of looking at it.
And he would just stay quiet. He'd go, yep. He would go, yep, that's one way of looking at it.
So one other thing I want to talk about is the cloud thing. So you and I we always see shapes in the clouds, and we always see angel shapes in the clouds, and we always see the feathers in the clouds. And that one time, shortly after Princess Coda, who was our 20-year-old Himalayan kitty, who we absolutely adored and was like our sweet four-legged child, We were devastated to lose her. And shortly after we lost her, it was just within a few days, we went to what was our cabin in Salida, Colorado at the time. And there was this amazing sunset happening, and it was purples and pinks and blues. And it was one of the most stunning sunsets we'd ever seen. And the next thing you know, her entire shape of her sitting the way that she always used to sit in the window by the sunbeam with
very
her
prim and proper, with her
bushy tail.
Yep.
And I mean, it was just, and being a Himalayan, she had a very distinct shape to her face. It was so clearly her in these clouds. We were just
it was like a big thunderhead cloud, so there was like layers behind her, and so it looked like this little platform with her sitting there, and then this like frame behind her. It was incredible.
It was incredible. In fact, if you go back on our social media and you type in hashtag Princess Coda or possibly Coda Espiritu, ESPIRTU, you might find that post and that photo of the clouds. It was just so.
And then what about sylphs?
So that was totally new to us, right? So we were writing Courageous Money, and we were doing a lot of walking to kind of flush out the book and the
concepts and
the ideas. And we were always in creative mode when we were out walking. And I remember we had a conversation with one of our spiritual advisors, and she started talking about sylphs, and we were like, what are sylphs? And she was talking about these ethereal creatures in the sky, and they're sylphs. And she said, the sylphs because the clouds become they're sort of wispy, but they're very curvy and flowy, and they're sort of separate, and they're there. And we started sending her pictures because we kept taking all these pictures of the clouds when we were on these walks talking about Courageous Money. And she was like, well, that's because the sylphs were there with you helping in the creative process. And we were like, what? So now we see the sylphs all the time. Again, I just think we have very open minds.
I think so. And it took me forever to remember sylph. Like, what is that thing she said? What is that thing she said? But now. And
it was hard to spell. SYLPH.
Okay.
Is how you spell it.
I still wouldn't have even known that. So, yeah. But and then now you see them everywhere.
Yeah. So. And most people would probably say, some of this is because you and I have such a creative side, which we do, but you and I are both very equally right brain and left brain. So it really isn't just that, right side creative brain at work. I just think we tend to be very open to these things. And I think as a result, we've had a lot of reinforcement of that. And a lot of our signs have come to fruition in many ways. And we've even felt presence a lot of times. And there are things that have happened in our home with electronics and things like that, which is a whole other level of the spirit realm. And we've had a lot of uncanny things happen that really would have no other explanation than spirit.
Well, I think if you're looking for a book that will open your mind, is The Journey of Souls. We did it on audio, and it was like, holy cow, because this was an atheist who was a psychotherapist, and he was helping people in a hypnotic state, and he was running into a pattern of them in the in-between souls, the souls in between lives. It was the souls in between lives. And he started to record them, and then he had enough that he created a book. But it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I think that really opened us up to the spiritual world of what's possible and what's capable. So anyway, The Journey of Souls, it was amazing.
It did. And I think I've always been open to that idea of, again, you have a soul, and it travels into different bodies, and the whole reincarnation thing. I think that's always been something that I felt very strongly is very much a part of who we are. And again, the world according to CCnDoc, right?
Absolutely.
So go out and look for some signs, folks. And as I understand it,
everybody has different signs, whether it's birds or animals or different numbers on the clocks.
I do. And I saw a woman the other day. You and I don't always like to tempt fate like this, but I saw a woman the other day who is very clear about saying it's okay to ask for a sign, but she also said you need to be very specific about the asking so that you can't mistake it once you see it. So she used the example of, she asked for the sign of a red button if something was going to happen. And then she said she literally ran around her house searching in all the places in her house for the red button. And I thought, well, that's cheating. But what I realized is it wasn't, because she said she was pulling things out that she hasn't looked at in years. and all of a
Okay.
sudden she did come across a red button, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
And that was supposed to be confirmation of a particular thing that she was asking for the sign for. So, you just
find your own validation of something. Yeah, okay.
like Ted Lasso, you just have to believe.
You have to believe.
You have to believe.
So as you're looking for these signs, one thing that we did learn is that when the spirits mess with your electronics, whether it's light switches, radios, sounds, sound on the radio getting louder or whatever it is, it's the highest form of communicating that a spirit can learn to do is to mess with your electronics. And so just be aware of that.
Pay attention to the signs, everybody. They are there.
Sign,
They are there.
everywhere
if you
there's
look
sign. Da, 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 da.
everywhere a sign. I don't
All
know
right.
the rest of that song, so we'll leave you with that. Thanks for tuning in to CCnDoc Talk. We'd love for you to follow us on social media at CCnDoc. That's CCnDoc. And you can visit our website at CCnDoc.com. We also take monthly donations to support this broadcast if you're so inclined. We'd love to hear your comments, suggestions, and questions, and we'll do our best to respond. Thanks, and have a fantabulous day.